So hello and welcome to the 7th episode of the Spotlight Podcast, the unofficial podcast for Century 21 sales representatives in Canada, where we discuss the hot topics and important news in the real estate industry. So I'm your host, Linas Kilius, and with me as always is Eryn Richardson. Eryn is a broker and general manager with Century 21 Heritage Group. Eryn has an extensive background in online marketing, technology, and customer service. And I'm the head of business development at the real estate marketing company, Homeania. So for today's show, we've got a couple of items we wanted to cover. In our news segment, we're going to be looking into some of the surprising revelations about the binding nature of the offer to lease, and then followed by our main segment, which we'll be discussing a trend in the market, which is involving conditionless offers and the issues involved with those. But first, I want to welcome our very special guest on the show today, Sue Heddle, sales representative with Century 21 Miller in Oakville, Ontario. So welcome to the show, Sue. It's your first time on. So
Thank you.
How was your week? I've been playing a lot of phone tag with you. You've been very busy, I understand.
Yeah, well, the market continues to be hot. I've never experienced it like this in the Oakville, Burlington area. I mean, this is commonplace for Toronto, but this year, multiple offers every single night, trying to get in to see properties before we can even go. They're already sold. So it's been insane this year.
Yeah, it's crazy. And being from Homeania, the marketing company too, just trying to get all like the photos and everything up and online before these properties are selling can be tough for us too. And just for the podcast too, trying to get guests in here, like everyone's just so incredibly busy. It's pretty nuts. So I've got to constantly follow up with people on the phone just to get them on the show too. It's just the nature of the market.
Well, you were lucky because the houses I was going to show this morning sold last night, so I'm here.
Yep. Good thing, or else me and Eryn will be doing this solo. So I'm really glad we could have you on. So do you want to tell us anything about yourself at all? Like maybe a bit of your background experience in the industry?
Well, I actually was in television news for 23 years. I was a television news editor for the CBC. And then I got so busy selling real estate that I had to actually leave my job there and went solo selling real estate. And one of the things I started doing that made me different than other realtors was I owned a staging company, or still own a staging company, and stage all my homes free for my clients because, Linus, with your business, that nothing sells a house better than enticing people in with those beautiful images, which is why I use you guys, because you guys do it like nobody else. And, we've got options to have drone shots and virtual tour and all those bells and whistles attached to your listing, make your listing stand out.
And just so everyone knows, we're not paying Sue to say that. This isn't supposed to be too much of a promotional spot, but definitely thank you for the glowing reviews and such.
Well, it's true.
Makes a huge difference. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone does want to check out our stuff, it's just spotlight.century21.ca for the record.
Now that was a plug.
That was definitely a plug. I figured it was a good time for it, so I might as well just throw it in there.
Perfect.
Okay, so let's get into the news segment. So Eryn came across an article this week. It just came out last week in REM magazine. The article is entitled "Some Surprise Revelations About the Offer to Lease," and I guess I'll just get Eryn to intro this. Sure. So Eryn, you want to take it away?
Yeah, no, I read the article, and then surprisingly enough, I got a phone call from an agent that had a question that pertained almost directly to the article. The question the agent asked was, I signed an agreement to lease, which we often refer to as the offer to lease a property. Everything's binding, okay? And now the landlord wants my people to sign a new lease, like a separate lease from what we negotiated. Mm-hmm. So, the questions started going back and forth, like, I've got to see the agreement, because was there anything in there about a separate offer or agreement to lease being attached? So what the article had to do is exactly that. What are you signing when you're signing? And in every province, I guess, or in every board, there's different standard forms. So they call them different things. In Ontario, we call it an agreement to lease. But as I understand, it's also known as an offer to lease. So really, what is it? Is it the offer and then another lease was to be signed, or whether it was actually an agreement to lease that you're negotiating and that actually becomes the lease? So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so are most, like, where's the misconception come here? Are most agents under the impression that when you do have this offer to lease or agreement to lease, that is the terms of the lease, and that might not be the case? The landlord, I guess, could come back and come back with a different conditions and such. And is that what's the concern here?
Well, the interesting thing about the article is that it came from, I think, a different board, which they always have a separate agreement to lease signed above and beyond what they had offered back and forth and negotiated. And in Ontario, we actually put in a clause that's fairly standard that, and I'll read it to you. It says the tenant and landlord agree that an accepted offer to lease shall form a completed lease, and no other lease is required. That's something we use in Ontario.
Right.
And just to be clear, this is going to be the lease, so no other lease is to be signed. And in this case, that was the advice I gave the agent was, well, don't sign anything else because this is the lease. These are the terms.
Because you've already negotiated all the terms, like who's going to pay for the water and who's going to pay. You've already done all that, assuming in the agreement to lease that you've already signed. So I would never instruct my people to sign another lease. You've already hashed that out.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is I read all the clauses in the agreement to lease, the pre-printed clauses, and one of the clauses reads like this: lease shall be drawn up by the landlord on the landlord's standard form of lease and shall include the provisions as contained herein and any attached schedule, and shall be executed by both parties before possession of the premise is given. The landlord shall provide the tenant with the information relating to the rights and responsibilities of the tenant and information on the role of the tenant or landlord and tenant board and how to contact the board. So it actually states here that if I don't put in this clause that I had originally suggested, that there is going to be another form signed. Right. There is going to be another lease signed. So that clause is really important to remember to put in.
Also, other standard lease clauses, I've gone on lease agreements where I've said to the listing agent, do you have a standard lease? Well, no, just make up a lease.
Yeah.
So in that case, of course, I'm going to be doing everything on behalf of the leasee, right? The tenant. So yes. I'm going to, do my best to get the best deal for my tenant. So I know at Century 21 Miller, we have a standard lease form that we have in our forms, which I then can go through and pick and choose the ones that will work best for my tenant.
Yeah. Yeah. And you'll put that in the agreement to lease, that'll be part of the negotiated form. You won't do a separate one, will you?
No, I put that in it's like a schedule, right?
Yeah, it's a schedule.
So you put in the lawn, if they're going to cut the lawn or not, things like that, snow removal. You negotiate all that stuff going into it.
So interesting enough, there is a clause that we use, and maybe we can make this available to the listeners as well. Because if there is a separate lease that, let's say, a landlord has, and a lot of landlords do have them because they want to make sure it's done on the same form that the lawyer did up for them years back or whatever. The clause has to read like this if you're going to put it in. Attached hereto as schedule, let's say C, is a copy of the landlord's standard lease form, which the landlord will alter to reflect the business terms defined herein, and the tenant agrees to sign the same subject to minor adjustments as negotiated between the landlord and the tenant, both acting reasonably. In the event that there's a difference or contradiction between this offer and the standard lease form, the terms of the lease as so negotiated shall prevail, save for manifest error. So that's saying that if there is a discrepancy between the two, what was negotiated originally is what will prevail.
Right. But yeah, I think that everybody who's representing a landlord should have a schedule prepared with the things that the landlord wants done. Yeah. And all those clauses should be negotiated before. Yeah. And if you don't have that, then what's going to happen is the tenant is going to come in with what they perceive as, what's going to be best for them. So I try to be fair and protect both sides and come up with an agreement, because ultimately these people are going to have a relationship. Once you leave the scene, these people are going to be dealing with each other for the next year or two. So you want to go in being fair and reasonable with both parties.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. So we can make that form that Eryn mentioned too, the bit that you guys have at Heritage there, available in the show notes. So we'll put a link to that so you guys can check it out later. And by the way, Eryn, you read lawyerese very well there, sir. I was trying to follow as best I could. Oh, I'm glad
that was a tough one.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so maybe we'll move into the main segment. And when we contacted Sue to come on the show, she had something specific she wanted to talk about. It's OREA Treb Form 127, Conditions in Offer Acknowledgement. Now, I'm sure every province or board might have something similar, or maybe they don't have something formal, but especially in like a Vancouver, Toronto market where you've got these conditionless offers coming in, I guess these can be an issue. But Sue specifically told me not to look into it too much because she wanted to get my take on it fresh-faced, I guess. So, Sue, do you want to talk about this form and let us know what the situation is?
Sure. So, right now the market is so crazy, and you're out with people. For example, I was working with a young couple. They're moving up the food chain, so they already had a townhouse, and now they want to move to a semi-detached, detached in Mississauga area. Well, every single house we went to see, it was packed with people. And, they're thinking about it. Maybe we'll put in an offer, and then offer night rolls around and there's already 6-7 offers, and they didn't feel comfortable. So we kept looking, and we finally found a property that, she absolutely fell in love with. And can we cue the theme from the love story? And anyhow, she fell in love. I could see it in her eyes. She wanted this property. And so we decided to go in with a bully offer. Now, we're talking about, spending $800,000 on a property. And I know going in that they've already got financing, and not just bank financing with somebody sitting, plugging their numbers into a box. They actually have already a firm commitment from a bank. So they've got that. And now we're talking about home inspection. So we know if we're going to go in with a bully, it has to be like a too good to be true offer for the seller. So it should be clean. So I said to them, we can't come in with the condition of home inspection. Let's do a pre-inspection on the property so that we can come in clean. Because it's my job as a real estate agent to protect you, my buyer. So I want to make sure that this property is sound before you make an offer, because I don't want it coming back to bite you or me. So they're humming and hawing. Maybe we should do a home inspection, but how much is that going to cost? I'm like, you guys are going to be putting down $800,000+. Spend the $200-$300 to have a home inspection. At least do a walkthrough. So we did that on a lunch hour. We rushed in with the home inspector, and he did a walkthrough on the property for them. So that night, we go in with our offer. What I had them do was sign the Form 127, which means that I have counseled them, and they have been asked to put in conditions, but they have chosen not to. Now, I knew that they were safe, but Eryn, maybe you can speak to this, because it says the buyer hereby acknowledges with respect to conditions that the buyer, and then there's 2 boxes, will not be including conditions in the buyer offer, the above described property, will be waiving the conditions in the buyer offer of the above described property. So what's the difference between waiving or not including?
Well, when you waive something, it's like it never existed. So I can see where your question comes from, because really it's doing the same thing. You're just not, I think the reason why they put will be waiving the condition in the buyer's offer is a lot of times you've put it in there, and they're sort of waiving that, saying, listen, home inspection or financing, I'm good. But that, well, it's not 100%. We haven't shown the house to the lender. The lender hasn't got a full approval on it.
That's right.
Right. So they're waiving it or not including it, depending on which way, whether or not it was in there originally. I always suggest to put it in there and then have them.
And then strike it and then initial it.
Yeah, just so that you show that, listen, I gave you every opportunity to have the mortgage, the mortgage broker look at things and make sure that you're approved. So there's a few things you can do, but I guess they, just wanted to be accurate in terms of whether or not it was included to begin with, or whether or not they waive that. I suggest you use the waive, because essentially they're saying, listen, we're given the opportunity to put it in there, right?
Right. So, and then also below that is pending too. So all the options were the financing of the above described property, the sale of the buyer's property, which nobody goes in with that anymore. Right. The arranging of insurance on the building, and obtaining a home inspection, and then there's other, right? Yeah. So the financing, the other important thing is you have to just tell your people is that even though you may be good with $800,000, the property may not come in at that price. So you will be forced to make up the difference, whatever that be. Like if it comes in at 750, say, they would have to make up that extra 50,000. So you counsel them, and then to protect yourself as a realtor, you know you've done your job. You know that you have counseled them to the best of your ability. But this form is your insurance policy that they're not going to come back and say that you didn't in the future, right?
Yeah. What's happening right now is, and I've talked to a lot of mortgage specialists, and they're saying with the way the market is, every house is a new record, right? It's a new record sale. Right. Something hasn't sold.
I know everything's coming in exactly at what the price was. It's coming exactly what the selling price was.
Well, and that's what the appraisals are. Now, I just was involved in a situation where the client was solid. Okay. Everybody's agreed that this is the price they're going to pay, and everybody's happy. The appraisal came in over 100,000 less than the house was sold for. And the reason why the appraiser gave was she couldn't come up with any comparables. Right?
Yeah, but you can't anymore.
I know. And this is the issue. So we got to be careful, because in all other markets, that person probably would have waived that condition and said, yeah, I'll go without it. I've been pre-approved. I've been approved. The bank knows me. Everything's great. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't appraise out. Now, if it doesn't appraise out, that doesn't mean that, the person necessarily can't afford it, or the bank won't put a mortgage, right? Right. I mean, it just means that they may have to come up with more of the down payment.
Right.
But so this form, Sue, that you're talking about, I know you've say Form 127, and in Ontario that makes some sense. But
okay,
go ahead.
So it's the conditions in offer acknowledgement.
That's what OREA, the Ontario Real Estate Association, has named it. Prior to this coming out, did your brokerage have a similar in-house form?
No.
No. So this was something that people are using now because OREA has created the form. In the past, I've seen custom forms done for this that specifically state, and they actually go into more detail in terms of not only are you acknowledging that you're taking a risk, but I've seen forms specifically state the real estate agent does not recommend that these are being removed. Yeah. Right?
Well, in this market, people are prepared to take all kinds of risks just to get into a property. And I was just on one in a rural property where there was 3 offers. My clients came in, and I said to them, this is a rural property. Luckily, they were seasoned. They'd bought, a few properties before, and they'd also lived in a rural area. You've got a well. You've got a septic system. You've got a home that's older. You've got a pool. It had every single red flag thing you could imagine. And so I said, we have to come in with an inspection. We have to look at the septic system. We've got to see the potability of the well, and that pool is not open. We don't know what it looks like underneath. Well, the listing realtor came in with their own offer. This young couple comes driving in from Toronto, and they bought it clean. Mm-hmm. So I had to counsel my people and say, I'm sorry that you didn't get this property, but were you willing? Was it worth the risk to you to have no conditions? And they knew that night they had to make the decision whether they were going to go in clean or they were going to, and they just couldn't justify it. And they thought, you know what, we'll offer more money. And if that seller's prepared to take it, then fine. If they feel their property's sound and they're willing for us to do our due diligence, then we'll go that way by giving more money, but we're not going to waive those conditions. And the seller didn't take it. So
I love what you had said about the pre-inspection. I mean, that's really working really well for your buyer, because if they can get in there ahead of time to look at the major things that will be, of costly nature, and they're okay with the big things, then all the little things don't really matter, right?
Right. But Eryn, in this market, realtors, like less than scrupulous realtors, are listing properties on Friday and taking offers on Sunday night. Mm-hmm. That's what's happening. And so it's like almost like they don't want you to do your due diligence. They're going out of their way to make it next to impossible for you to do that.
Yeah, and it's tough. It is. Yeah. You almost have to tell
Very
your seller,
difficult.
listen, take the worst case scenario. What happens if we have to, spend $3,000 getting rid of mold in the attic? What if you have to fix crack repairs? I mean, how many things can add up? Are you willing to take, let's say, $20,000 or $30,000 in issues that could arise and just take the risk?
That's exactly what we said, because there's also what are those underground systems to water the, what is that called? I can't think of it. Irrigation system. Like there was every single thing you could imagine that you things could go wrong with, and that's like a $20,000 fix, and the pool could be a $10,000, and we added it all up, and that's why we thought, okay, so we'll offer a little bit more money, but we want to inspect. It wasn't worth the risk to them.
And
well, here's an interesting thing with regards to the rural property. You had said rural property, so I didn't realize up until the point where I had to deal with this that when you put a mortgage on, let's say, a 10-acre house with 10 acres, that the mortgage company will appraise the value of the property and then take off whatever land above 2 acres, let's say. Each lender will have a different policy, whether it be 1 acre or 2 acre, but they'll only put a mortgage on the house in 1 acre or the house in 2 acres, and then the rest of the acreage is they won't value. So the value, let's say if they spend $1.5 million on a 10-acre property with a house on it, it'll come in at 1.2, and they'll say because that extra 300,000 is the land beyond 1 or 2 acres. And so a lot of people, when they go in and expect the appraisal to come out, and they, they're surprised, of how low it comes.
So is this formula different for different lenders?
Yes, but I don't know of a lender that doesn't take some sort of formula into account, because they don't, without charging a premium, they do not put a mortgage on land. And there should be no value in the land. It should be all in the house. Basically the usable space with the house in a backyard or whatnot. Yeah.
Right. Makes sense.
So when you guys have been talking about all this, the first thing that comes to my mind, getting back to what we were talking about a little bit before, is given the craziness of the market and just how quickly everyone has to respond and react, do you both think that consumers are taking more risks than they're probably comfortable with too? Like, it almost seems like you're kind of pressured into the situation, and whenever you get that pressure and like anticipation of purchasing a home, I imagine people do get a little bit in over their heads in terms of not only the cost with these multiple offer situations, maybe paying more than they want to, but going in firm with no conditions too. It seems to be quite a bit of risk, and being someone who's not in the Toronto market, that's something that I would never do, but I've never been in the situation where I've got to deal with this, right, and have to be concerned about competing with so many different prospective buyers on homes. Like, it just seems like there's so much risk that people probably shouldn't be taking, right? Like, is there
have to take it.
Yeah, well, I guess that's it though. You do have to take it.
The question is not when, or sorry, not the question. The question isn't whether or not you should take it, it's when you're going to be taking it. People lose out on 4 deals before they finally take the risk.
Yeah, that's true. But you'll be out with them like on a few deals, and I'll see tears on both sides, right? I'll see tears of joy when they get a property, and then then they get hit in the face with the reality, like, oh my God, I just spent $800,000, $100,000 over asking price for a semi-detached house, and then they're crying, did I overpay? So you can't win even if you win, right? Like, people are, so they get caught up. There's a lot of emotion involved in buying property, and that's one of the reasons why I've always had my own staging company, is because you're selling lifestyle, and people get involved and see themselves living that lifestyle, and then when they all of a sudden realize, oh my gosh, I just bought into that, they're happy initially, but then they go through a bit of a stage of buyer's remorse, and then come back to reality. It is what it is, and everybody's in the same boat in this market.
Yeah, and is there any sort of end to this, or is this just becoming the norm in the major metropolitan areas in Canada now? Like, is this just going to be what you're going to be seeing in Toronto and Vancouver from here on out, just given the competitiveness in the environment? Or
do you have a crystal ball, Eryn? I don't.
No, we talked about it last week, and I still think it comes down to immigration policies. If the immigration policies change, and we have less people entering Canada and foreign investment, I think you'll see the slowdown. And
Eryn, they're not even entering Canada. They're buying and they're not even here. So I don't think it has to do with immigration.
No, but foreign policy. So the policies for foreign investors. So people that are purchasing property from another country. I mean, and that's what's happening, as well as immigration. Yeah.
You know what's really interesting is we were having this discussion. My father-in-law's from Vancouver, and he was here this weekend, and he's watching me running out and coming back and running out and coming back. And I was saying, it's got to stop at some point. And he said, well, look at it from the other side. So he's got a house across the street from him that just sold for $4 million. And it sold to Chinese buyers who purchased it and have never been there. And the house is just sitting there. Well, I was saying to them, in the States, they have a policy, at least in Florida, a first look. So a Canadian citizen, or American citizen, has 21 days first look. So it has to be offered up on the market, and if an American doesn't buy it, then it opens up to everybody else.
That's interesting.
And he said, yeah, but Sue, how is that going to make me feel any better? I don't care who buys, because right now my house is worth $6 million. If you change the policy on an old guy like me, and I'm the guy that votes, and then devalue my property.
Oh, hey, you can't have the cake and eat it too, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Because they're driving up the price of his property while he's sitting there, and so he doesn't. It doesn't bother him. So it's just the people that are trying to get into the market. But I mean, even something like I just said, like what Florida was doing during the downturn there, having that 21-day first look. I don't know. Maybe that's something that we should implement.
Yeah, well, any sort of policymakers are going to be very careful because, I mean, we did talk about this a little bit last show, but with a foreign investment, which is kind of hard to quantify too, like it's more just because of there's not really any good statistical tracking of how much foreign investment there is. But I mean, just anecdotally, and everyone kind of has that feel, there is quite a bit. But with the amount that's coming in, if that gets reined in too much, it could end up creating some sort of correction, right? Which is what you want to try and avoid. And this foreign investment into marketplaces in Canada and to real estate marketplace is contributing so much to our gross domestic product that it's buoying like kind of economic growth right now. So, any sort of policymakers are going to be very, very careful when they're dealing with this kind of fine line between, slowing down the crazy growth in housing prices, but then also making sure that the economy doesn't take a downturn as well, right? It's a very fine line.
Exactly.
So, but
it saved us. It saved us in the last 10 years. It saved us. I mean, we were supposed to follow what happened in the US with all the prices going down, and we didn't. We were the exception to the rule. And you just point to these sort of policies, and maybe, as much as people are, it depends on what side of the fence you're on. If you're a seller trying to get out of the market right now, it's amazing. You're cashing out at the top, right?
Yeah.
Or is it the top? Who knows? But they're cashing out at a good time, no doubt, right? So
yeah, but the problem is I got sellers that can't sell because where are they going to go?
Yeah.
And they're waiting to find that right property that they can move into, and they're all snapped up. So I'm in a big holding pattern with about 4 sellers because they're buyers too. So they're trying to buy down, but everything they want to go in on is gone, and they're sitting in their house that they want to sell, and they're like, well, how long is it going to take? And I have no answers.
Yeah, it's all lateral movement, right? As long as you're staying in the same area, like your housing price is going up, so is everyone else's. So like, unless you're exiting the market, like Eryn mentioned before, it doesn't necessarily even benefit you at all because it just makes things a little bit more difficult even in a lot of cases.
Can I point on one thing that I heard the other day? And people are saying it, it's so easy to sell your house nowadays. Why would you use a real estate agent? And I'm on the complete opposite side, of course, because I'm in real estate, but I see, and people have to understand the difference between selling at a high level, let's say 100,000 over asking or 120,000 over asking or that much higher. I mean, we're talking some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if things are set up properly by the real estate agent in terms of holding off offers and scheduling the right time, doing things fairly and making sure that you're looking at all offers and all situations and dealing with everybody fairly, you will get so much more in price. I mean, we're talking big time money difference. And I think it's more important now, more than ever, to have a real estate agent, because people think, oh, I sold my house in one day. Well, that's a mistake, because how do you know that there wasn't somebody that would pay $100,000 more. You never got to see it. They didn't get to see the house. So if the real estate, like you're saying too, I mean, don't list on a Friday and take Sunday offers. List on a Monday and take next Monday offers. Get everybody through. Get the highest you can get for the house. Yeah.
Exactly. And then people are also, you know, all these discount brokerages. It's just so scary what happens. And I end up doing both sides of the deal. I had an agent calling me and just handing his people to me on the phone.
Really?
I'm like, I can't help you. They're like, well, we need to know about the I go, I am not your real estate agent. Your cousin is. He's sitting beside you. Talk to him. I cannot help you. I'm sorry. I'm not your agent. But Sue, you've always been so good and so professional and kind with us. And I go, yes, but I don't work for you. Your cousin sitting beside you.
Talk give to you a referral fee
that's
for
what's
that.
happening. Yeah, that's what's happening. It's because everyone thinks, you know, selling a house is like falling off a log, but it is not. There's a lot involved, and it takes a true professional. And I'm tired of people thinking that we're you know, lumped in with used car salesmen or whatever. If you are dealing with a good agent, a solid agent that knows their stuff, they're going to protect you as a seller or a buyer, and you're going to get the best deal, and you're going to feel confident in your purchase or your sale.
And that just shows healthy competition, because when you have somebody that's not giving the service and you have somebody that's giving lots of service, that gives a point of difference in this market. I don't want all real estate agents to be considered equal. I want the bad ones to be bad and the good ones to be good. Why? Because I think I'm a good one. I can take advantage of me being a better agent. Therefore, and listen, if there's bad ones out there, just, you know, you got to do your research. You got to figure out which one is the one you want to use, one person you want to, you know, do business with. And like I said, it's good competition when you have choices, and it just makes the better real estate agents look even better, right?
Right. So. Well, I always say I'm very lucky because I get my piece of the pie, and everybody else is just fighting for the crumbs, right?
There you go.
And that comes from being, you know, solid. And, you know, I'm not saying that newer agents can't do this. I mean, I welcome anybody into the market who wants to treat it like a true profession and do the best of their ability. But, you know, it comes from delivering what I say I'm going to deliver to my clients.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, to a certain degree, you're both preaching to the choir here about the importance of real estate agents too, because most of our listeners probably are real estate agents. So I'm assuming they all have the same sentiment about, you know, thinking that real estate agents are very important in the marketplace. And they definitely are. And I guess the problem is a lot of consumers, the ones that without that, I guess, lack the foresight will look at the dollars and cents and be like, well, I can just save the money here. And they don't realize that everything that the real estate agent brings to the table in terms of, you know, getting higher asking price or, you know, limiting your liability as well. But so I'm going to move on to the next segment of our show. Sue has an app that she uses on her iPhone.
I'm excited about this.
I know she was going on about it on the phone when I was talking to her before the show, and I said, you know, save it for the show, Sue. So it's called Magic Miles, and it's an iPhone app, and I'm going to let Sue take it away from here.
Hi, yeah, that app. So last year I'm doing my taxes, and always writing in my little book in the car, and my accountant even said, Sue, use one of those pencils that, you know, that when you have the extendable lead in it, so if it breaks, because either your pen's freezing or the lead breaks, and then you have to remember, especially when you're in a deal and you're running between houses, to jot in your mileage. Well, I kept saying to my accountant, is there not an app for that? Well, I went and did some research, and I found the app. It's called Magical Miles, and the thing I love about this is it tracks your movement. So if I'm out in the morning in my car showing houses, and then I stop, it actually records that. So I can be, okay, I was showing houses this morning. Then when I go pick up my kids from school, it's also recording that and that trip. But I don't want to export that trip because that wasn't for business. And the thing I love about it even more is because I have my staging van. So sometimes I'm driving my staging van, or sometimes I'm driving my car. So if I'm driving a staging van, I don't have to go in and key in the mileage. You know, don't you hate doing that? Even if you have an app, like some of these apps, you have to put in like 74,000 kilometers, and then you start it. But this just follows your movement all day. And then you can go in at the end of the day, and you can look through, and you can export those logs.
I'm
Are you loving this or what?
I'm pretty excited about it too, because I actually have a little black logbook in like the little glove box of my car. And the problem is, like, if I'm going to a business meeting and I need to record those miles, I always forget to put them in till the meeting's over. So I got to try and like estimate, be like, oh, about how far was it? And just, try and like figure out what the kilometers were beforehand and such for on the odometer. And it sounds to me so much easier just to let your GPS on the phone handle it. And it's smart enough because it sounds like it probably monitors your speed and sees how fast you're going, so it knows when you're actually in the car or not. So it can do that all for you. So yeah, it definitely would help me make my logging a little bit more complete for tax time. I'm sure a lot of people probably just kind of ballpark their mileage at the end of the year.
Oh, but apparently the Revenue Canada is cracking down on agents.
My accountant has told me up and down, make sure you have a logbook in your car or something to kind of keep track of that, because you'll be happy if you ever do get it audited, that you do have that there. So yeah, and just so everyone knows too, this app is only for iOS, but they do have similar apps for Android or BlackBerry, I'm sure too. But Magic Miles is the one that Sue likes to use for sure. So I'll be checking that one out. Okay, so I think we're gonna wrap up the show here. We're getting a little bit long on time. So Sue, if someone's in Oakville looking for a real estate agent or looking to refer a client into a real estate agent in the area, how can they get in touch with you?
You can go to freehomestaging.ca. That's one word, freehomestaging.ca. Or you can also look me up at Century 21 Miller or SueHeddleHomes.com.
Yeah, for sure. So if you like the show, subscribe to our show on Stitchers, iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts online. And please don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on those sites, because it really helps. So you can watch this and past shows at spotlight.century21.ca/podcast. If you need to reach us, you can email us anytime at podcast@homeania.com. That's podcast at HOM as in Mary, EAN as in Nancy, IA.com. So this podcast was brought to you by the Spotlight Marketing Program, which we mentioned earlier. An exclusive marketing package available only to Century 21 agents in Canada. Spotlight provides agents with a comprehensive internet marketing strategy for their listings. We provide high-quality HDR photography, stunning HD video tours, a cutting-edge responsive website, and an extensive advertising system that will help sell your listings faster, sell them for more money, impress your clients, and generate leads. So find out why so many top agents are using Spotlight by visiting spotlight.century21.ca today. Sue, thanks so much for coming on our show. Thanks everyone for...
Thank you. It's been great.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Sue.
We'll see you next week. And Sue, we'll definitely have to get you on again. I think that went really well.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye now.